It's still starting.
It's live.
It's
Yep.
live.
Okay. All righty.
All right. Oh, I guess I'm the group leader this time. So it says to invite someone to offer a prayer. Did we do that last time, or we just kind of forgotten that?
No, we had prayer last week.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had prayer every week.
Okay. Well, someone want to be great and volunteer to do that then?
Sure. Our dear gracious Father in heaven, we bow our heads before you this time, before we start this case study conversation, that we will be blessed with thy spirit and thy love, that we'll be able to feel thy spirit, that we'll be able to guide our conversation, that we'll be able to learn more about this case study and what we can read between the lines of it. We're grateful for membership in thy church and for the opportunity we have to be able to attend BYU Idaho and to be able to do so from all different parts of the world. We're so grateful, Father, for all of our many blessings. When we pray for these things, in the name of thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to go over a quick synopsis of the case. So the coach of the Army crew team at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point faced a dilemma about how to foster team performance. It says at the start of the crew season, he had used objective data on individual performance to select his top 8 rowers for the varsity crew and the second tier of 8 rowers for the junior varsity crew. The two crews raced one another at practice. However, the JV crew beat the varsity crew about 2/3 of the time. The case follows the coach's attempts to determine the causes of these aberrant results. Aberrant. Oh, that's a good word. By the end of the season, the varsity was still mired in a downward spiral with only 1 week to go before the season-ending nationals race. Coach must decide what action to take to help the varsity crew's member pull together to reach their potential as a team. All right, so just to start off with, I guess, just have a kind of a general discussion about it. I guess, so back to the case, what was the issue? Why is that important? Specific behaviors, actions, and results that raise concerns. I didn't have any thoughts about that at all.
Well, I guess the issue is the JV's beating the varsity like crazy, and in a normal world, that's not supposed to happen. So
I think it's
that's
just
an
they're a
issue.
better team. One thing I've noticed for the past couple weeks is if you read the Speed of Trust assignment before you read the case studies, you understand going into it what they're looking for and what the issue is going to be. I don't know. I just noticed that. But yeah, this is a good example of just people that are kind of full of themselves. They're great athletes, but they're horrible teammates.
Yeah, that's. I was surprised that it took them 11 pages to say what they did.
No kidding.
I was a little surprised when I opened it up because I was like, oh, they're all supposed to be short ones after that first week. And then I was like, oh, this isn't a short one.
Yeah, I thought there were some exhibits down below, but I mean, it seems to me like there was just no leadership. There was, they were all looking out for themselves, and it said that in a lot of different ways. I think that's in essence what it boiled down to. They weren't working as a team, and the JV team was.
Yeah, it flat out said it at one point. It said that on the varsity team, when they did the psych evaluation of them, there was no leaders, and almost all of them were team distractors. But on the JV team, there were no distractors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when they had that group discussion or whatever with the coach, it was all everyone's like, "Well, I'm pulling my weight. Well, I'm pulling mine. I'm pulling mine." Well, you say you are, but what about the we instead of just the I?
Yeah, and that's what I thought. I mean, that last little bit when they were at the what did it say? They were at the picnic place or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, earlier in the case study, it talked about how if one person was going too hard, it would throw off the balance, or if one person was going too soft, it would throw off the balance. It sounds like they had 8 people going in different directions and could never get on top of it.
Yeah. The interesting thing I noticed was there was a quote from the coach in there that said, the trick is to knowing somebody's going to mess up inevitably is to get the other 7 people not to react and to have the trust in their teammates that their teammate will automatically correct on their next stroke. Because if they all try to react, then it's going to throw it off even more. Hi, Nadine.
Anything?
Complications, Nadine. Glad you got here.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
It's all good.
Okay.
No, Tanya, I was thinking the same thing about, I was thinking of the same thing where they said you have to like trust your team member to correct himself and not try to correct for him. I think that's something that I would personally find really hard to do. And it sounds like these group of people, they just didn't have any trust in each other. I almost wonder if by cutting some people, or not cutting, but by the coach specifically putting some of the stronger people down in JV just because they're poor team performance, if that kind of got everybody like to a point where they're kind of afraid that they would get cut too if they were to perform poorly, and so they started kind of like trying to make up for each other and prove that they were good, and then that kind of thing. It just seemed like a lot of factors just caused it to spiral.
Yeah. It's like they're trying to outdo each other instead of, there was a quote that I found that I used in my write-up today. It was so great. It was referring to the Seattle Seahawks, but it said, which is weird.
No.
I live in Chicago, and I'm a Packers fan. Like, our dog's name is Lambo. So sports, whatever. But it talked about why are they considered a team and not a group. And they said because a team is a bunch of people that are working towards a common goal and all want to get there together. And a group is a bunch of people that all are like, they have goals, but they're not trying to do it together. Like typing. I don't remember. It was a really good quote, though.
Yeah, I think I thought like that too.
All right. I think we kind of covered the behaviors and actions that raise concern too. I thought it was interesting. It's having us we wanted us to kind of ask about like data and performance. So as far as like the measures that the coach has in place to kind of gauge which team members belong in which team, what were some of the measures that you guys think were good? What were some that were bad and that maybe should be gotten rid of?
That was one of the ones that I did on my write-up for the problems, was that the coach seems very, very data driven.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, he's like, oh, well, he can do, he can row faster than everybody else, so he's got to be stronger and this and that. I mean, he didn't look at. It took about 7 pages before he looked at leadership qualities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, where he was able to step back and say, okay, well, I know I've got the strongest people out there, but why aren't they performing right?
Yeah, I think it took him a long time to react overall, or to recognize like exactly how serious the problem was.
It's kind of like that case study from 2 weeks ago at like, what was it, Darby Foods or something like that, where she's like, oh, but this guy, he gets such great results, but they failed to ever take into account the fact that he had no people skills, and that was causing a big issue. And I feel like that's kind of the issue with the way the coach went about selecting the teams. I coached 4 basketball teams, and there's a lot of times we've had to bench like our best player because they just don't play as a team, and they are trying to break the team apart, and they're, whatever. And sometimes you have to realize that just because somebody's physically talented doesn't mean that they're the best on the court. Sometimes the person that's best on the court is the person that plays with all heart and has no athletic ability at all.
Yeah, that's true. And he doesn't seem to communicate well with them, or they don't seem to meet and have a good relationship. And I think that's important for a coach, to have a good relationship with the team.
Yeah, I think there's all different aspects of a team and their abilities, and I think he was focused just a lot on the physical aspect of it, and maybe not so much on the mental or psychological side of things. And so I think there needs to be a better balance of, I guess, everything. And like we said, there was lack of leadership skills and everything.
Yeah, seems like a big part of maybe a big problem with his like individual measures is he seemed to measure people really individually. Even when it came down to like whether or not they're like leaders or interrupters, it was still like totally individual. So he just focused on each person. Like, I don't get what and so he's almost saying like, I don't get it. Each of these people are really strong. Each of them seemed to help their team do better when they were with every team they were on. So why don't they do well together now?
Yeah.
instead of like just gauging them as a team from the get-go.
Maybe he should take some pointers from former West Point coach Mike Krzyzewski on working as a team.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I had, it didn't make sense to me, and I kind of wanted to get your guys' opinions on it, was towards the end when he was splitting everybody up, adding this varsity team. He switched a couple people to the JV team to the varsity team, and they said that the JV team was still winning. Now, I wanted to get your guys' opinion on why you think that was happening. It didn't make sense to me. I would think that, I mean, if he threw somebody off that was competing for themselves into a different boat, that it would have the same effect on the JV team as it did on the varsity team, but it doesn't seem like it did. Any thoughts?
No, I hadn't considered that. Honestly, that's a really good.
Well, maybe there's still maybe if he puts 2 people down there, there's still 6 people that are working as a team, whereas the other boat's still going to have 6 people trying to work as individuals and only 2 people trying to work as a team. So there's still a better dichotomy for the the higher team aspect versus the still individual heavy boat. I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe he switched the wrong people, meaning it didn't make a difference because he didn't share it equally or the way it should. I don't know.
I think it might be like the opposite. Like initially I was thinking like, why would, the person from the varsity team make the JV team go faster? But it could even be that by putting someone from the JV team where he, like a person on the JV team, he really gets along with everybody, and then being put on varsity where he knows they don't get along, it's not a good feeling. They perform just worse as a result because that guy is like kind of bummed about having been moved in the first place. Maybe they're just performing even worse as a result of the switch, as opposed to like the JV team doing like significantly better.
Yeah.
Yeah, because attitude does change how you perform too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the type of environment you're in, if you all have that same goal in mind, then I think it's easier to work together. And if you're all just a bunch of individuals wanting to just be, do it yourself, then that's how it's going to be. So the type of environment you're in helps, I think.
Awesome. So, just in response to those, all the different problems we talked about, what were some of your guys' recommendations for what the coach should do next?
I said go with the whole JV team because they have proven that they're willing to work hard as a team, and they've shown that they're the better team and they're the ones that can actually win. So, and maybe I know it caused some drama initially, but maybe that's a slap in the face that the varsity team needs to get their act together.
Yeah, especially at the end of the season, if they got like one race left or whatever, if you really are there to win, then you're going to want the team that's performing better and that works well together. So that's kind of the conclusion I can do. Just put the whole JV team in.
Mm-hmm. I definitely don't think he can turn everything around in 4 days before the Nationals enough to win.
Yeah.
I think communication is will make a big difference. That's one of the solutions I had to, talk to each team member and see if you could work on getting them to work together.
That was one of my main points, was especially knowing a little bit about the leadership, and these guys are at West Point. I mean, they take direction all day long. I mean, I think he needs to assign a leader, and I mean, demand that the people under him follow him. But I mean, it said that at one point in the readings that the junior classman didn't want to say anything to the senior classman because he outranked him. And so I know there's a lot of pride there and stuff like that when you go to sports, but I mean, at the same time, these guys are at West Point. So I think there's, a little bit of where they would fall into line and do what they're told and not fight for themselves. if they were, if they changed their attitude towards the leader, if they had a defined leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely better if the coach appoints someone as opposed to like someone appointing themselves. A lot less to fight over that way.
Mhm.
So let's pretend that we like recommend the coach doesn't switch the varsity team out. How would you have them? How would you have them try to like fix the varsity team in the short time that they have? What are some things that you think he could even do to try to work on that?
It's hopeless. It's hopeless.
I know we're just like, oh.
No one wanted to say it, but I mean, it's not like they could just go to the trust fall out in the woods and they're all gonna like roast marshmarshmallows would be great or anything.
We can go like sit around the campfire and sing Kumbaya, and they'll all be better.
Yeah, I tried to think of solutions like that, and it all just felt really cheesy and like I didn't really believe that it would work. I just wanted to say it because it's what I felt like they were supposed to say. But yeah, I think somebody mentioned the idea of like having them kind of air their grievances out. I remember the part in the book though, The Speed of Trust, where Stephen Covey thought it would be a good idea to have the employees like air their grievances about the merger that was going on, and they ended up talking for like, what was it, like the whole day, 15
The whole
hours or
day.
more,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
bashing the leadership. So I think he could do that in like and maybe he could take a leaf out of Stephen's book and do, because I forget what he did to do it better. I think he had the field talk, but then he allowed the leadership to address it. So maybe if it was more of like a back and forth thing, maybe that could be something that could actually be helpful for them.
Yeah. And maybe do some interesting activities to help them to get to know each other better.
Sure. Any other thoughts? Any other recommendations y'all had?
To keep them together, I got nothing.
Yeah, I will say I think somebody had mentioned something about like having the coach like appoint like a team leader or whatever. Speaking from experience, that actually causes a lot more resentment than you would think. We had that issue this year. We tried, giving one of our eighth grade boys, because our schools go up through eighth grade. And so we gave an eighth grader, we're like, all right, you're kind of shy, but we're going to make you the team captain. It's you're the oldest, take the lead, whatever. And he was like, okay, he owned up to it. But then there was a seventh grader who thought like he thought he was everything. And he's like, he hasn't even earned it. I'm so much better than he is. Like, it caused some issues. And the kid actually like walked out of practice for a couple days and almost ended up getting kicked off the team. So you kind of have to be careful in a situation where you have a whole bunch of me, that while intentions can be good with things like that, they don't always happen the way you hope.
It seems like the real root of the problem is like the individual's pride as opposed to like lack of leadership or lack
they
of
need
like
something
opportunity to talk.
They need something to knock them off their high horses. But unfortunately, it seems like losing to the JV team hasn't really done anything. Like,
you would think that it would, but it doesn't.
I'm like, just strip them of their like varsity and be like, until you figure it out, you're riding the pine pony.
So maybe someone can explain to me. I actually was kind of confused about why why it would be such a big deal to switch them anyway. Like, what's the significance of it being JV versus varsity? Is it just because he feels bad demoting people, or is it because like varsity competes differently, or like what's the difference between the two? I wasn't much of a sports guy in high school, so
I was wondering if the kid one is junior. I don't know.
Yeah, varsity, you're a little bit. You're supposed to be a little bit better on varsity. Like you have JVs. JVs like you're not have as much experience, or you're younger. Or, you just don't have as much experience, and you're just not that as good as people on varsity.
Yeah, they typically don't compete for championships or whatever. They're kind of like the practice squad.
Yeah, they're like the backups.
Yeah, they're the backups. So the varsity is a team that would go after the national championship, where the JV wouldn't. Like, they can practice with them and do minor competitions, but they wouldn't. They're not the one that's going to get all the credit for the school. And you also get more recognition inside of the school if you're on varsity versus JV.
Okay, so if you put the varsity team on JV, it essentially he'd be benching them,
Yeah,
Right.
and then the other guys become the starters.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's it. It makes more sense now because I was like, okay, I get this is a problem, but is it that big of a problem? But that makes way more sense now.
Well, because yeah, also
Like they both,
if they're on scholarship, it could be an issue.
Oh
it
shit.
seems like they both run the race though. So I
True.
mean, I agree with that it was confusing, and I don't know much about rowing, but I mean, it seemed like varsity and JV both ran the same race and competed against the same people in the heats and stuff like that. So.
Right, because if you could mix them up or switch them, then yeah.
And that does happen. That does happen even in like schools today, in high school and
Yeah.
stuff. Some people come from JV to varsity every once in a while.
Yeah, you can play on both. Like I know in basketball, you can play like 5 quarters a night. So you can play
Hmm.
3 on one team, 2 on the other, or like 4 and 1 or whatever. And the coaches can move you back and forth. Rowing's a little bit different. I have a friend, one of the girls that was in Young Women's here. She's a rower, but
Well, I don't think anyone should like try to force it. But did anybody have any like personal lessons they learned or personal experiences with anything like this? Or I guess we already heard some personal experiences about from the basketball teams and such, but any like gospel applications or just personal life applications that you got from this as you were reading it?
I thought about Nephi and his brothers.
It seemed they didn't get along.
Yeah. You know, they felt like they were in time, but it was just right along those lines.
And I guess since Nephi was the younger brother, you could say that God put the JV team in.
Yeah.
yeah, because how many times were they like, and why should we listen to you? You're our little brother. Like, and who's God to make you ruler over me? You know, that's pretty spot on, Alex. Good job.
Well, yeah, I mean, it all falls in line. You know, I mean, JV. I mean, when they weren't put on varsity the first go around, I mean, it probably humbled them. I mean, we all know that our Savior would rather work with humble people than prideful people. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of experiencing this at work right now. So like I just moved into a different department a few months ago, and I got a promotion over a lot of other people that applied and were maybe more, I don't know if they were more qualified than me, but they had been in that department a lot longer, but I got promoted over them, and so they're having a lot of issues with me right now. And so I'm trying to work through things, but it's just a matter of me trying to get them to work with me together as a team instead of it just being an I thing and having hard feelings against me because I'm just this young kid and I work with these older people who've been there a long time, and I haven't been there as long as they have, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah, absolutely. That's got to be tough. It really does.
It's tough, but it's a good learning experience for sure.
Tana, you had mentioned that you felt like the things we read in the Stephen Covey book really applied to like the lesson this week. Was there anything specifically that you're thinking of?
Trying to remember back to what I read about. We talked about a lot about trust this week, and how I was reading through the discussion board question for this week, and it talked about how changing trust from like from a noun to a verb. I'm trying to remember what I read it all yesterday. That's the problem when you read it all in one day. It's kind of like, yeah, it was just a lot about, having trust be an active, two-way street.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
No, it's fine. And I'm just like, it's almost 10 o'clock, and it's been I got stuck in the parking garage at work today.
Oh, dude.
Like, the door would not open to let me out. It was, for like a half an hour, it was a little nerve-wracking.
That's terrible.
So, did any of you happen to look up, you know what ended up happening, how this ended up working out, what the coach did?
No.
Hey, I looked it up because I was curious. I guess this was a true story. So, of course,
Yeah.
in these cases, like I always feel like I come up with recommendations that would never actually work. I just kind of like, well, this would work, I guess, and then no one ever actually does what I think, because they're all smarter than me. Well, the coach did something that I never would have. I really never would have thought of. How do you say his name? Is it? I'll just call him Coach B. So this is from a CNN article. It says one day, coach lined up the varsity crew in 4 pairs. He told them they were to wrestle, no punching, for 90 seconds. There were no clear winners. Each man was discovering that his opponent was just as strong and determined as he was. Coach then had them change opponents and wrestle again. By the 3rd round, they were choosing their own opponents. One guy would point at another and say, "You," the coach said. Finally, one of the rowers started laughing, and they all piled into a general brawl. Eventually, someone said, "Coach, can we go row now?" And from then on, the varsity boat flew.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a true story, I guess. That's cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, they did say that in the show in the article that at the end of the season somebody walked up and punched somebody, but they had to wait until the end of the season to do that. So.
The one guy didn't know if he
It
could wait till the
happened
end.
before.
Yeah, I think that's really clever. It's like he knew that they not only did they get to like kind of air their grievances physically and kind of like maybe like put someone in a headlock they really didn't like, but they also, like I said, they got to discover like each person was just as strong as them and kind of like, I guess, test each other's strength in a way. And I guess in a weird sort of sense that built their trust more.
It's like the whole Festivus episode on Seinfeld, like where they have like the feats of strength and the airing of grievances, and like we got a lot of problems with you people, but it works.
But it
Everybody
works
goes
a lot
along
better than
happily afterwards.
Well, awesome. I don't know if there's really too much else to discuss. Anyone else have any closing remarks? Anything that you just like really wanted to say but didn't get a chance to? You didn't want to like butt in. Any last thoughts? I actually really liked this case this week. Some of the weeks you read the case and you're like, okay, I got through it. It was an okay story. But I thought this was actually really interesting. So I'm glad we did this one.
You're not gonna lie, that first week's Circus Soleil one, I was like, not gonna lie.
Never
This
seen.
one I thought was like I didn't understand it very well, but I think as I go over the questions and stuff, it helped to do the exercise.
Mhm.
I did it more when I had to look for the problems and figure it out.
I found this time, I tried when I was going over the case study. I like sat there and I highlighted anytime I saw a problem, and I wrote in the margin like the issue, because especially being a longer one, I found like the last couple weeks I'd read through it and I'm like, oh, they had some issues, and I'd be like, oh, what were their issues? Yeah. So if I highlighted it as I went through, then I was like, oh, sweet, I found my 6, like, and I can see if something else pops up or whatever. But it also helped me like find some good quotes to go along with my problem descriptions.
That's a good idea to do that.
Yeah, is there any there's no really specific way to wrap it up. It just I guess if we're all good, then we'll have someone post it on the discussion board, and then we should all be good to go.
Yeah, I'll post the link since I've got it. If you want to, I don't know if there's a write up or something you got to do.
You just have to write like a little summary and who was there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what we talked about and came to the conclusion of, I think.
Yep. All right. Next week, Daniel is in charge.
Okay.
Are we back to Wednesdays next week, guys?
Yeah, I think so, right?
Okay,
Wednesday next week works.
sounds good.
Is Daniel here tonight?
Yeah, Daniel, can't hear you, Daniel. Are you talking?
Oh, I can't hear.
He's trying to talk.
Yeah, I don't hear you.
Is that why like,
I
never
see your
hear
mouth
him?
moving.
He's probably like participating. We could like never like, because I never heard him talk. I was wondering.
If we all make him full screen, then we can read his lips.
Yeah.
Sorry, Daniel.
Had some technical difficulties too, right? he can hear us well. I can see
Yep.
that.
Because I can see his lips moving.
Yeah, I can see his lips moving too, but we can't hear him.
A thumbs up if we're on for 8 o'clock next Wednesday.
Yes, I see
Yes,
that.
he's in, yes.
Sounds good.
All right,
All right,
awesome.
guys. We'll see you next week then.
All
Okay,
right.
have a good
Have a good
Yeah.
week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.